All right, this is going to be Hebrews 6 and 10, the impossibility of salvation, part 64. Left off here talking about the way of judgment, the paths of judgment, and look, the your way is not your works. Your way is not, your lifestyle. Ultimately, yeah, you walk in the way, and you know, you walking, yeah, okay, fine. You want to say that's your lifestyle? All right, fine. But your way is not your lifestyle. Your way is what you think, what you think is right, the way you try to go, the way you want to go, the way you think is right to go, the way you ultimately think and perceive your doctrine, your understanding, your judgment in your heart. And all his ways are judgment. The paths are paths of judgment. Every good and true path is a path of understanding and righteousness and judgment. So, we left off here in Proverbs 2. And look, it said, every good path. And it talks about walking in the way of good men, that thou mayest walk in the way of good men and keep the paths of the righteous. Oh, well, I walk in the way of good men. Well, but look at this. The way of good men, the paths of the righteous, it says, for the upright shall dwell in the land. You're like, okay, yeah, I'm a good man. I mean, I'm pretty righteous. And, I know I'm not perfect, but I'm upright. I mean, I am. But see, the Bible, it right here equates the way of good men and the righteous and the upright. I mean, if you're going to say you're a good man and you're righteous and you're upright, well, then you got to say you're the perfect, because it says it right here. If you're going to say, well, I walk in the way of good men. I mean, I was walking an evil way, but then I turned and changed my ways, and now I walk in the way of good men. Well, then you walk in the way of perfect men, because the way of good men to God is perfect men. It's perfection. If you're not perfect, well, you're walking in evil ways and I'm walking in good ways. You think your ways are your lifestyle, and you think you're a good man walking in a good lifestyle? But the truth is, you got to be perfect in your understanding. That's what it really means. You need to be perfect in your understanding. You need to be perfect. And if you think it's your lifestyle, well, you don't meet that either. You're not perfect in your lifestyle. Are you perfect? No, nobody's perfect, you say. I know. That's the whole problem. That's why you can't go to heaven, and your ways are not the ways to get to heaven, because if they were, they would be perfect, and you would walk perfectly in the way, and you would never mess up. You would walk up to heaven and just fly up to heaven like Jesus, because you'd be perfect, and your ways would be perfect, and you'd go straight up to heaven. You wouldn't take a little crooked path and like, well, I don't want to hit Mars. I'll go around this planet here. Well, I don't want to hit a few stars. I'll go this way and weave through the stars and go up there. It ain't a crooked way. It's perfect, it's upright, it's straight up. If you can't go straight up to heaven, then this isn't the way you walk. It's a binary difference between the perfect and the wicked. You're either the perfect or you're the wicked. You're the upright or you're the transgressors. If you want to say you're a good man and you walk in the way of good men, then you think you're perfect. No, I don't. I don't say I'm perfect. Yes, you do. You're saying that. I know you don't understand it. I know you don't understand you're saying that, but you're trusting in yourself that you're righteous because you think that you're good. If you think you're good, to God, you're saying, I'm rich, I'm perfect, I don't need anything, I'm good. So you can't come and eat. You can't come and get his stuff because you already have stuff. You're rich. You're perfect. You're just. You're righteous in your own eyes. To God, righteous and just and upright and good means perfect. Your ways, your understanding needs to be perfect. Your judgment needs to be perfect. So when you divide good from evil in your understanding, when you judge, your judgment has to be perfect. Your judgment, your path, your understanding, your way, the way you judge yourself, the way you judge others, the way you say this is good and this is evil. This is a Christian and this is a lost person. This is a sheep and this is a goat. The way you judge has to be perfect, because that's how God's going to judge. Binary. Sheep over here, goats over here. There's nobody in the middle. There's nobody, wow, he was a little sheep and a little goat, and he merged, and I just said, all right, he's like a half sheep, half goat, and I don't know what to do with this guy. God's going to know exactly what to do with you. It's going to be obvious. It's going to be obvious to him. It's going to be obvious to everyone. You're going to see it, man. You're going to see it on the outside, like you can't see it today on the outside of flesh. But one day, Christians are going to have new flesh, and it's going to be obvious on the outside. I think at the judgment, it's going to be obvious. But right now, we can't see it. It's only on the inside. It's only in the spirit. It's not in me. It's not in my flesh. You can't see it in my lifestyle. The difference between me and a lost person is nothing. It's not in this world. The difference between me and a lost person is in Jesus Christ. I'm in him. I'm perfect in Jesus Christ. My ways and my understanding and everything is perfect in Jesus. And my ways on the earth are crooked, man. A lost man is crooked. His understanding is not binary. Taking from the poor, taking from the poor stuff, because this is what we're really talking about, is giving to the poor. And you got to understand what it means to give to the poor. You got to understand what it means to take from the poor. And this whole taking from the poor and giving to the poor, it's not about people's stuff in this world. It's not about taking their wallets and their keys and their money and their stuff they laid up and, oh, well, I was saving up for college for my kids and then somebody came and scammed me and I don't have any money now. Well, I hope that guy's definitely going to hell. If you're doing that stuff, you're going in the lake of fire, man. God's not going to condemn anyone for that. He's going to condemn them because they didn't receive his words. That's it. Jesus said, don't think that I'm going to accuse you to the Father. You have one that judgeth. He that receiveth not me and receiveth not my words hath one that judgeth him. The word that I have spoken, the same shall judge him in the last day. That's what you're going to be judged by Jesus Christ. Are you upright and perfect and just as righteous as Jesus Christ? And you're going to be judged by his words. Did you receive his words or not? Did you understand his words or not? Did you receive the understanding of his paths, of his judgments or not? Did you understand them or not? Oh, I believed in his word. I believed in Jesus. Not if you didn't understand it. Not if you didn't judge it right. Not if you didn't judge it in binary. Not if you were judging according to the flesh. God's anger is against those that steal his words, not steal people's stuff and money in this world. So truly giving to the poor is not giving them stuff and money in this world. Truly stealing from the poor, the stuff that really angers God, is not about stealing stuff in this world. It's about stealing his words, because honestly, that's what God cares about. That's his stuff. That's his money. That's his substance. That's what he lays up. He lays up wisdom. That's what he's laid up for the just. Treasures and counsels and knowledge in wisdom in heaven in his words. Jeremiah 23:30 says, therefore, behold, I am against the prophets, saith the Lord, that steal my words, every one from his neighbor. That's what God's mad about. That's what his anger is over. That's why he's wrathful. People steal his stuff. He tries to give it to the poor. He tries to give it just free and give it. And Satan and the false prophets, they steal it. Steal his words. And the thing is, they don't just rip them out of their hands and take it away. Hey, you can't have that. I mean, I guess they have in the past, right? Try to kill people and burn all the Bibles and blah, blah, blah. But couldn't stop it. There's too many Bibles in the world. So what do? They corrupt it. Well, you just, change them a little bit. Because if you change his words, you steal them, man. All you got to do is change a little bit. All you got to do is just tweak a little bit, because every word of God is pure. So if you're going to change words, it's not his words anymore. They're corrupted. They're perverted. That's how they steal them. They steal the ability to understand them. Like Jesus said, hey, you don't enter in yourselves, and those that are entering, ye hinder, because you take away the key of knowledge. You take away the ability to understand. That's how they're stealing. That's how the false prophets, that's how the false brethren are stealing from the poor and taking from the poor, even though they don't understand it. They think they're giving to the poor. Oh, I was just out there yesterday in the community serving the poor, serving my neighborhood. No, you're stealing. You're robbing the poor. How do you turn the poor aside in the way? How do you steal from the poor? You take God's stuff away and you give man's stuff to the poor. So you can give to the poor and really be stealing from the poor. You can give to the poor and really be robbing him. You're like, what? Yeah, you can give to the poor in this world and you're robbing him, because you're taking away the spiritual things. You're giving him the earthly things. You're giving him lies. You're telling him, well, yeah, I mean, here, do this, and then this is how you get saved. I mean, Jesus can help your life, and if you live like this, you're really saved. I mean, he'll come in, he'll help your life, he'll clean you up, man. And if you're really saved, don't worry, you're not going to be perfect right away, but you'll be getting better and better. You'll be out here like me, serving the community. I know you're down and you're on drugs right now, but if you listen to what I'm saying, you'll get your life cleaned up, man. You'll be like me out here, looking good, looking clean, living clean life, have a nice house to go home to after you go out in the community and serve, and you'll be laying up treasures in heaven because you'll be doing good works, That's ravening the prey, man. That's devouring souls. Ezekiel 22:25, picking up here, it says, there is a conspiracy of her prophets in the midst thereof, like a roaring lion ravening the prey. They have devoured souls. They have taken the treasure and precious things. That's what God's angry about. The treasure and the precious things. Look, you're not going to the poor in this world and robbing his treasure and precious things. You know why? He don't have any. He don't have any treasure and precious things. So who can stand? Who's going to stand before God? And God's going to say, hey, man, you robbed me. You stole my treasure and my precious things from the poor. And they're going to be like, what? I never did that. And he's talking about, fleshly stuff in the world. He can't say that to them because they didn't steal treasure and precious things from the poor in this world. The poor didn't have any. It doesn't make any sense. But if they stole his words, if they corrupted his words, if they didn't receive his words, if they hindered the poor that were going to receive his words, and they turned them aside to lies and changed the judgments and changed the counsel so they couldn't understand, and they judged wrong judgment, and they went in crooked paths, and they said, well, you don't have to be perfect. You just got to be a little better now. Well, I know you believe in Jesus, but you're not really saved if you're not living it too. You justify the wicked, you condemn the just. I mean, he's perfect. He's just. He believes in Jesus. He's saved. He's perfect in Jesus. And you say, well, he's not really saved if he lives like that. You've robbed the poor. You've condemned the just. Her princes in the midst thereof are like wolves ravening the prey. The word ravening is the Bible 5 times. Every time it's connected with false prophets. This is talking about false prophets, man. It ain't talking about people hurting people in this world. It's not talking about people, there's one guy who uses this passage and says, well, this is the only other time the Bible says this about wolves and blah, blah, blah. It's the only cross reference. And there you go. It means you got to obey the law. This ain't about obeying the law, man. Nobody obeys them. Nobody keeps the law. You're not perfect. You don't keep the law. This is about God's words. This is about false prophets stealing God's words. Not, well, they were saying you don't have to keep the law. Yeah, well, you do have to keep the law. No, these guys are saying, yeah, be good. You got to keep the law. You got to do good works. I mean, you can't just say one prayer one time and be saved. I mean, you got to love the poor. I mean, if it's not overflowing and coming out in your lifestyle, man, you're just like, God's not really in you. He would be, it's natural. It's a natural thing. You're a new creature and there's going to be more love and care and more loving kindness coming out of you now because God's in you and doing good things in you. And you think that's good things? That's worldly stuff. That's fleshly stuff. And King Solomon was very clear. Everything under the sun is vanity. He says, list of verses I put here. And culminating in this one, Ecclesiastes 4:7, where King Solomon said, then I returned and I saw vanity under the sun. I mean, everything under the sun, he says, is vanity. So when it says they're wolves ravening the prey, to shed blood, to destroy souls, to get dishonest gain, oh, well, they're stealing people's stuff. The poor don't have anything for them to steal. Not in the flesh, but spiritually, that's what they're stealing. That's what they're getting, the dishonest gain, man. They're stealing God's stuff from the poor and preying on them and getting some benefit and profit in the flesh in this world. And her prophets have daubed them with untempered mortar, seeing vanity and divining lies unto them. That's what they're seeing. That's what they're giving them. Like they're giving to the poor vanity. They're giving them fleshly stuff in this world that corrupts and turns to nothing. Seeing vanity and divining lies unto them, saying, thus saith the Lord, when the Lord hath not spoken. The people of the land have used oppression and exercised robbery and have vexed the poor and needy. Yea, they have oppressed the stranger wrongfully. Look, man, it's oppression. Telling somebody they have to do good works or else they're not really saved is oppression. Whoa, no, I don't say you have to do. I say you will do. You're saying the same thing. You're saying if you don't, you're not really saved. If you don't keep the law now, if you don't do good now, if you don't, at least you love God and love your neighbor, you can't really be saved. That's exactly what the false prophets were teaching all the way back in Acts 15. Vanity, lies, fleshly stuff. That's oppressing the poor. And maybe you poke at this and say, well, thus saith the Lord when the Lord hath not spoken. Well, I'm saying what God said. I mean, the law says, love thy neighbor. The law says, what are you going to tell me? I'm not saying what God says. I'm saying, it says, thou shalt not kill. Well, then you better not kill, man. What do you want me to say? It's in the Bible. It says, thou shalt not kill. How are you going to tell me I'm saying something God hasn't said? Well, God also said, thou shalt not bear false witness. Do you lie? Look, you can't take that, and you don't meet it. You're not perfect. If you want to say, well, I'm good, then you're divining lies. Because God hasn't said that you're good. He said that there is none good, no, not one. He doesn't say, well, a Christian's better now. He says a Christian is perfect. So if you say, well, we're not perfect, but we're better now. We care more. We try, and we have a passion in us to love our neighbor now. We couldn't really be good before, but now we're getting good. We're getting better, and it's improving us. Sometimes we'll have some problems, but over time, that's not what God says. So you're dividing lies. You apply this stuff to the flesh. You apply New Testament Christianity, the things that Jesus says, the things that the apostles write to the flesh, and you're oppressing the poor, you're robbing the poor, oppressing the stranger wrongfully. Because it's crooked judgment. God's judgment is perfect. Every way, every path of his is judgment, and his judgments and his ways are perfect. If you're going to walk in the way of good men, you're going to walk in the way of a perfect man. You better be perfect. It says the people of the land have, it says there, the people of the land have used oppression. I know this passage is about, false prophets. But look, the people of the land are not innocent. It's like, well, the false prophets, it was really them. They're the ones that are going to go. The people, they just got tricked. Like, God's not going to judge them harshly. I mean, they just got tricked. But, they weren't the ones tricking, But it says the same thing. The people of the land have used oppression and exercised robbery. Because look, if you believe what a false prophet's preaching, if you get turned aside, then you're going to the same place. You get the same judgment. Psalm 125 verse 5 says, as for such as turn aside unto their crooked ways. This isn't just the false prophets that say, hey, come on side, and they deceive him and turn people out of the way. You don't even have to be turning people out of the way. You just have to turn out of the way. If you just turn out of the way, if you just get deceived. As for such as turn aside unto their crooked ways, the Lord shall lead them forth with the workers of iniquity, but peace shall be upon Israel. Look, ultimately, everyone's a worker of iniquity. But you could say, well, you don't even have to be a worker of iniquity. You don't have to be the one working of iniquity. You just got to get turned aside by him. You just got to get deceived by him. And then, therefore, you're the same as him. If Jesus had gotten lied to and tricked and deceived and turned aside with, by the workers of iniquity, then he would be with the workers of iniquity. Then he would go where the workers of iniquity will go because his ways would be crooked. If you let your ways get crooked, then you're going where the crooked are going. You're a worker of iniquity, and you're going where they're going. But peace shall be upon Israel. You get peace, or you go where the workers of iniquity go. If you're a worker of iniquity, if you sin ever, well, I'm not perfect. We don't have to be perfect because God forgives. No, God requires perfection. And if you work iniquity, then he's going to say, depart from me, ye that work iniquity. You got to be perfect. You're not going to go to your judgment and he's going to say, well, I know you work some iniquity, but, you did believe in Jesus too. So I'm going to give you mercy. I know you're a big sinner, but, you tried. So I'm going to give you mercy here. Don't work like that. You're going to have to be perfect. You're going to have to be not a worker of iniquity. Otherwise, he's going to have to say, depart from me, you worker of iniquity. Isaiah 59 verse 8 says, the way of peace they know not. Look, it's the way. You have to know the way. You have to understand the way. And there is no judgment in their goings. You got to have judgment. That's your goings. If you don't understand judgment, you're not going where the righteous are going. You're not going to have peace. You're going to go where the destruction, is. You're going to go to the wide and broad way where destruction leads. They have made them crooked paths. Whosoever goeth therein shall not know peace. Look, it's not just the people that turn other people aside. It's not just the people that you would say, well, he robbed the poor because he turned them aside. It's the poor that get turned aside. It's the people that get oppressed, that get turned aside. If they don't get saved, if they just get turned aside, they go where the wicked go. Whosoever goeth therein shall not know peace. You go with them, you turn aside with them, you're going to get the same thing. You're not going to get peace. So how do you rob the poor in truth? Not by stealing his stuff in this world. How do you lay up your treasures in heaven? Not by giving the poor stuff in this world. You rob the poor just by stopping them from understanding the gospel, just by corrupting their understanding of judgment. Jonah 2:8 says, they that observe lying vanities forsake their own mercy. You get no mercy No mercy. If you just observe lying vanities, all you gotta do is get tricked by them. All you gotta do is think and value. You just gotta value them. You just gotta ponder them and say, "Well, okay, yeah, that's good stuff. Yeah, I guess he's giving to the poor. I guess I should do what he's doing. I mean, that's a real Christian right there. He's working out his own salvation. You can see him doing it. You observe lying vanities. You think works in this world are proof of salvation? You're forsaking your own mercy just because of your judgment, just because you got tricked and deceived into thinking, well, man, that's a real Christian. Look at him. Look at he's righteous. You got tricked. You got deceived by vain things, fleshly, earthly things. You observed lying vanities. You get no mercy. Well, I didn't trick anyone else. I wasn't a preacher. I wasn't a pastor. I didn't go out witnessing and giving a false gospel to anyone else. Doesn't matter. You judged it that way in your heart. You believed it. So you're going the same way. You've forsaken your own mercy, no peace. All you got to do is simply get men to behold spiritual things, to not behold spiritual things. Just get men to not behold spiritual things and just to behold fleshly things. That's how you turn aside the poor. That's how you rob the poor. Simply take away doctrine from them and give them lies. All you got to do is take away their rest and you can't just say one prayer one time and just get a burden. Just put a burden on them. Just get them to work a little bit. Well, not a lot. I'm just saying, do like one good work. You do one good work. There you go. Proof of your salvation. You don't got to work your whole life, man. You just got to do one good work. Just love your neighbor and, just do one, because proof of your salvation is good works. And if Jesus is really in you, you will do good works. I mean, that's what James 2 says is, you will do good works. So if you just do one, because there's a lot of good works to do, just do one. There you go. You're good. Doesn't matter, man. You're going to put burdens on people when they're supposed to be resting. It's the Sabbath day. We rest in Jesus. We don't have to work. And you put a burden on man, say, you got to do this. You got to just do one. It's not a lot, but you got to do something here. And you put a burden on man on the Sabbath day. That's robbing the poor. You know this very famous saying. Jesus said, let the blind alone. Let them alone. They be blind leaders of the blind. And if the blind lead the blind, both shall fall into the ditch. And it's a very famous saying. Even people that don't know the Bible at all. No, blind leading the blind, man. Oh, look at these guys over here, blind leading the blind. Very famous saying. Blind leading the blind. And that's what false prophets are. The blind leading the blind. And they both fall into the ditch. It's not just, the blind who are leading and God says, well, I'm going to save the blind people that are following those blind leaders. I'm going to save them. I'm just going to let the blind leaders fall in the ditch, but I'm not going to let the blind followers fall in. No, they all fall in. And he lets them alone. You want to go that way? You want to turn that way? You think that's right? Go ahead. If that's your right, if that's the way you think is right, go ahead. So you know that very famous saying, but this one is essentially the same thing. They're the blind leading the blind. They're the blind oppressing the blind, but this is the poor oppressing the poor. Proverbs 28:3. A poor man that oppresseth the poor is like a sweeping rain which leaveth no food. I mean, think about that. A poor man oppressing the poor. How is a poor man oppressing the poor? How is a poor man stealing from a poor man? Neither one of them has anything. Neither one of them has any riches. A poor man oppressing the poor is like a sweeping rain which leaveth no food. This man comes in promising, hey, I got rain for you, man. I'll help you. I'll grow some crops for you. I'll give you some good fruit here. This is all you need is a little rain here. And he sweeps through and well, hold on a second. I thought it rained. I got no food. Where's the food going? Where'd the food go? I got a sweeping rain, leaving no food. What's the problem with no food? Well, no food is no judgment. No food is no salvation. No living water. No bread of life. That's the poor oppressing the poor. They come in and they steal the food. They steal God's stuff. You want to give to the poor? Just give them God's food. Just give them God's stuff. Just give them living bread one time. Then you have treasure in heaven because you gave to the poor. But if you take the man's bread, if you take doctrine away from him, you take understanding away from him, you're a poor man oppressing the poor. All you gotta do is turn him aside out of the way so he doesn't understand judgment. You're a sweeping rain which leaveth no food. Well, no, I gave him God's word, man. I gave him rain. No, you didn't give him God's word because you gave him lies because you told him, be good and if you're really saved, you will do good. Yeah, that's corrupted. It's God's word corrupted. It's, it's supposed to be living water. but it's a sweeping rain which leaveth no food, because a man is supposed to be, a good man is, the Bible says that they passing through the valley of Baca make it a well. That's what a saved person does. If I give my doctrine, my water, my judgment, my gospel to somebody else, they get eternal life. They become a well of living water. But a false prophet, when he gives his water, nobody gets any water. Nobody gets any food. It calls them wells without water. 2 Peter 2:17 says, Jude 1:12 says, clouds they are without water. They pass through, all this water passes through, and wait a second, hold on, where'd all the water go? Where'd all the food go? Where'd the living water go? They're wells without water. They got water with no water. That's what false doctrine is. So, to really give to the poor, you got to give them God's word. You got to save them. You got to deliver them. You got to give them something that gives them eternal life. But the other thing you got to do is you got to judge them. And I've been starting to talk about judgment. I want to talk about judgment, but not just about judgment. Like, you got to judge righteous judgment, but you got to judge others. You got to judge yourself. You got to judge others. You got to judge. You can't just be like, well, I understand. You have to understand the application of the judgment to yourself and to others. You got to judge. You have to judge the poor. You have to judge. No, Jesus said don't judge. No, that's not the whole of what he said, okay? Yeah, he said that, but that's not the whole of what he said. I'm going to show you, see, you have to judge. Isaiah 11:4 says, but with righteousness shall he judge the poor. See, that's what Jesus does. He judges the poor. And reprove with equity for the meek of the earth. Reprove with equity. When he judges with equity. It's equal. Completely perfect, completely equal. He can't say, well, these guys over here, I'm going to call them goats, and I'm going to say you didn't give to the poor, when the thing is, they did give to the poor sometimes, but it wasn't a lot. It just wasn't as much as I would think. Like, if I was helping them give to the poor, they would have given a lot more. And so these guys over here, I know there were certain times they didn't give to the poor, but, I know there's certain times that they stole from the poor, but for the most part, they really didn't steal, because I was helping them, and every time they did, I whacked them on the butt, and they stopped doing it, and they did it again, but I whacked them again. And so, for the rest of the whole life, I kept whacking them, and they did it less and less, but they did steal a little bit. I know they stole a little bit, and they didn't give every time, but for the most part, I'd say, 95% of the time they gave instead of stealing. These guys over here, 95% of the time they stole instead of giving, but they did give a little bit, but I'm just going to forget about the giving a little bit, and I'm just going to say that they didn't give. That's not equal, man. If they gave, then they should have treasure in heaven. And if these guys didn't give, if they gave water with no water, if they ever swept through and stole water from somebody and didn't give them any food, if they gave them food, but it wasn't food, if they gave them water, but it wasn't water and it didn't give anyone eternal life, then how can he say, well, I'm going to overlook that? The Bible talks about overpassing the deeds of the wicked. You can't do that. You can't overpass the deeds of the wicked and say, well, I know he sinned a little bit, but he also did a lot of good works too. So I'm going to forget about the sins, and I'm just going to call them good anyways. You can't call someone good if they sin. You can't call someone a sinner if they're good. How the heck can that coexist? To us, it doesn't make any sense. Well, you don't have to be perfect. You just have to be good. You just have to be better. But to God, good is perfect, and better is perfect and heavenly. So if you're better at all, if you're better than another man, then you're perfect. No, you're not perfect. Well, then you're not better, okay? Because that's how binary it is with God. He doesn't judge with inequity. You're going to get exactly what you deserve, and if you did a good work, you're going to get good for it. You're not going to get thrown in the lake of fire because you did a little good, but not enough. You're not going to go to heaven and, because you did a lot of good, but yeah, you sinned a little too. But don't worry about the little bit of sin. There's forgiveness for the little sin. No, if you sin, you're not going to heaven. You're going where the sinners go. You're going where the workers of iniquity go. If you ever work iniquity, even once, that's where you're going. That's equity. We don't judge with equity. Not too long ago, a couple weeks ago, I got pulled over speeding, and was going through a part-time. I didn't know the speed limit had dropped, kind of going into the city. Cops sit there and wait, and they know that people end up speeding there, so they sit in those certain spots. And cop caught me speeding. I was going, I don't know, 19 over or something like that. I mean, so I was going over. I was speeding. Pulled me over, and I started, it's not my first time being pulled over. And so kids were in the back. I didn't want them freaking out and anything. Kids can get worried, but so I was just like, look, this is a lesson. And so I started teaching them and showing them and telling them, look, Daddy broke the law, so Daddy's gonna get a ticket, and Daddy's gonna have to pay money, and I get a punishment because I break the law, and that's how it is. It doesn't matter if I was going 1 mile over the speed limit or 19 miles over the speed limit. I'm gonna get a ticket because I broke the law, and that's that's the rules. Well, anyways, lucky as it would have it, officer comes to the window and takes my license and registration, goes off and comes back, and I'm telling the kids, look, I'm gonna get a ticket. This is what happens. You break the law. You get a spanking. And the guy comes back and he says, yeah, well, Mr. Burke, I see you haven't gotten pulled over in a long time here, and it's been quite a long time since you had gotten pulled over. So just watch your speed. I'll give you a warning this time. And I was like, what a mess, man. I was just trying to teach my kids a lesson. You don't just get off because you've been pretty good, and this is the first time you broke the law in a while, But yeah, shoot, that's the real lesson there is this cop was like, it's his job to pull people over. He's trying to enforce, people stop speeding so much, but they can't stop people from speeding so much. So if he pulls everyone over who does 1 mile over the speed limit, the judge is going to throw him out of the court. They can't support that. Like it's untenable. So man's judgment is, well, you can't stop at all. You can't stop sin. So let's just try to stop the bad sins. Let's try to stop a lot of sins. If you're sinning a lot, well, then you're going to get some tickets a lot, But if you're only sinning a little, that's fine, man. Get out of here. Don't just be careful next time. I'll give you a little warning. God's not going to give you a warning because you only sinned a little bit. You're going to get that ticket, man. Or, you're going to have payment for that ticket. But someone's got to pay that ticket. You can't just not write the ticket. God doesn't judge like that. That's how man judges. Man judges, well, you didn't sin a lot. You didn't break the law a lot. You didn't speed a lot. If you were going 40, okay, 40 over, I probably would have had to write you a ticket, man. But 19 over, and you haven't gotten pulled over in years, it's cool, man. Just one time. Everybody messes up a little bit. That's man's judgment. Well, everybody messes up a little bit. Nobody's perfect. But that's not God's judgment. God's judgment is perfectly equal. If some other guy goes 19 miles over the speed limit and gets pulled over and gets a ticket, then I should too. I shouldn't get a warning, get off, and say, well, you haven't sinned a lot. You only sinned a little. You're not better. You sin. You break the law. You're not better than another lawbreaker because, you break it a little less than he does. Well, I break it a lot less than he does. So what? If you break it at all, you're a breaker of the law. Your circumcision is made uncircumcision, Paul says. You're a breaker of the law. You're going where they go. You're a worker of iniquity. Depart from me. I never knew you, you worker of iniquity. That's how God's going to judge, with equity. It's going to be perfectly equal and fair. So if somebody can say, hey, man, he can't go to heaven because he sinned, well, then you can't go to heaven. If somebody can accuse you of sin at all, you can't go to heaven because the wages of sin is death. And if they're going to go to death because they sinned, then you're going to go to death because you sinned. So if you ever sinned, even once, if you ever sinned, you can't go to heaven. That's how equal and fair God's going to judge. That's how he's going to judge the poor. The poor aren't going to get off because, well, they sinned a little, but like the guy that's, accusing them, the rich over there, he sinned a lot more. He was just a real bad guy. He was like a drug lord, and he was like an arms dealer and stuff. And the poor over here, he just sped a little bit on, 19 miles over the speed limit. Like, no big deal. I'll let him go and we'll condemn this guy. If they both broke the law, they both broke the law. That's how it is with God. If he's poor and God's going to let him off, God's going to justify him, it's going to be because he's perfect. God's not going to judge the poor and justify the poor if he's guilty. God does not clear the guilty. If God's going to enter into judgment with a man, the only way that man makes it out of the judgment is if he's perfect. Because God is equal. God judges with equity. He reproves and judges the poor with equity. That's how he saves people. with equity. Psalm 72, verse 2, he shall judge thy people with righteousness and thy poor with judgment. That's how he's judging the poor, with judgment and with righteousness. You better be perfectly upright. You better be right. You better be perfect. Better not be crooked, but he's going to judge the poor. That's what God does, man. He judges the poor. And you're like, what the heck? Judge the poor? Why are you judging the poor? Don't judge the poor. Judge the rich guy over there. He's the jerk. God's going to judge the poor. Why do you think he's going to judge the poor? He shall judge the poor of the people. Proverbs 29, verse 14. The king that faithfully judgeth the poor, his throne shall be established forever. This is a good thing. To judge the poor is a good thing. You're like, why would you judge the poor man? Man, he broke the law one time, 19 over the speed limit one time in like 10 years. Like, what the heck, man? Let him go. Leave him alone. Go get the rich guy over there. What are you judging the poor for? I mean, he's poor. Don't judge him. God judges him. And not in a bad way. This is for the poor. That's how he's helping the poor. That's how he's saving the poor. It's for the meek of the earth. It's for the poor. That's why he's judging the poor. This doesn't make any sense to you? That's because you don't understand it. That's because you're looking at it wrong. That's because you're looking at it with man's judgment. That's because you're looking at it with fleshly eyes. Don't apply it to this flesh. Don't apply it to the world. It's spiritual. The poor is not the poor in the earth. The poor is not the poor in the flesh. God judges the poor. And so guess what? We're supposed to judge the poor because you're going to be judged how you judge. You're going to be saved by judgment. And if you're going to go to heaven, you're going to have to go in the way of judgment, in the way of understanding. You're going to have to judge. You better judge the poor, man. You better judge the poor. I'm not going to judge the poor. No. I will not judge the poor. That's you. I'm going to love the poor. I'm going to give to the poor. I will not judge the poor. Whatever, man. Bible says you're supposed to judge. You need to judge you need to judge your neighbor. You need to judge the poor. I will not. All right. Well, then you will not do what God tells you to do. You will not have good judgment. God will not judge you favorably because you didn't judge. Leviticus 19, 1 through 2. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, speak unto all the congregation of the children of Israel. That's the context here, okay? Speak unto all the this is not like, when Moses made judges and said, hey, you're going to judge for the people are going to come to you, and you're going to judge, and if there's a matter too hard for you, you bring it to me. This wasn't spoken to the judges. This is spoken to all the congregation, okay? That's the passage here. And drop down to verse 15. He says, ye shall do no unrighteousness in judgment. Thou shalt not respect the poor. Thou shalt not respect the person of the poor, nor honor the person of the mighty, but in righteousness shalt thou judge thy neighbor. Everyone in the congregation of Israel was supposed to judge his neighbor. You're like, what? No, you're not supposed to judge people. Jesus said, judge not, or else you're going to be judged. You better not judge people. Don't judge people. Don't judge me. You better not judge me. You can't judge me. You don't know me. Jesus said, judge. The law said, judge. To all the people, it said, judge. Now, don't do any unrighteousness in judgment. You're not supposed to respect the person, the poor. Like I said, look, if the poor is guilty, God's got to condemn him as guilty. God's not going to say, well, I know you're guilty, but you were poor, and I like poor people, and I give poor people a little bit more, mercy and grace because, they sin a little bit, but they didn't sin as much as those people, and, they didn't have as good of a life on earth. I mean, like Lazarus and the rich man, the rich man, he just kept all his stuff and didn't give to other people. And Lazarus, he was just poor on the earth and he didn't have a good life. And so I'm going to judge these guys a little differently. The guy that's poor, I'm going to give him a little bit more grace and mercy. Even if he's guilty, I'll probably let him go if he's only a little guilty. But the rich, he better be really just, because if he's mostly guilty, I'm going to have to. No, God doesn't judge differently. It's got to be equal. So if God's going to condemn the rich and justify the poor, well, it's because the poor is innocent. It's because the poor is not guilty. He doesn't justify the guilty. He doesn't say, well, I'm going to give some mercy and some grace here to this guy because, I know he's guilty, but I just feel like it. I like this guy. He's poor. That's respecting persons. You can't respect the poor person of the rich, and you can't respect the person of the poor either. It has to be equal. He judges with equity. Thou shalt not respect the person of the poor, nor honor the person of the mighty, but in righteousness shalt thou judge thy neighbor. You got to judge. That was all the people were supposed to judge. It's not a new thing that you're like, oh, we better not judge. You were supposed to judge, and you're supposed to judge now. Zechariah 8:16 says, these are the things that ye shall do. Speak every man the truth to his neighbor. Execute the judgment of truth and peace in your gates. Speak ye every man the truth to his neighbor and execute the judgment. If you just read it this way, it says, every man to his neighbor, execute the judgment. That's what every man's supposed to do to your neighbor. Well, I'm supposed to love my neighbor. Well, you're not loving your neighbor unless you're judging your neighbor. So, no, don't judge me, my neighbor. I'm not going to judge my neighbor. I don't want him judging me. You're looking through, I'm not going to live in a glass house where he's going to judge me, so I don't want him. I'm not going to judge him. You don't understand judgment. See, if this doesn't make sense to you, it's because you don't understand what judgment really is. You don't understand judgment. You need to judge somebody. You need to judge your neighbor. And that doesn't make sense to you? That's because you don't understand judgment. Psalm 10:17-18. Lord, thou hast heard the desire of the humble. Thou wilt prepare their heart. Thou wilt cause thine ear to hear, to judge the fatherless and the oppressed, that the man of the earth may no more oppress. To judge the fatherless and the oppressed. Why would I judge the fatherless and the oppressed? I mean, judge the guy that's oppressing him. Don't judge the oppressed. Why would you judge the fatherless? That's what the Bible says, man. You're supposed to judge the poor and judge the fatherless and judge the humble and judge the stranger and the widow and the oppressed, and you got to judge them. Judgment is a good thing. As long as the person's innocent. As long as the person's, perfect and righteous. But there are no perfect and righteous people in this world, are there? So if you apply this to the flesh, how are you going to judge anyone with good judgment? There's nobody to judge that way. God's judgment is far above, out of our sight. He doesn't judge like we do. He doesn't judge after the seeing of, man's eyes. You say, that's not right. Don't judge the poor. Jesus said, judge not. I mean, here you go. John 7:24, judge not, Jesus said. Luke 6:37 says, judge not, and ye shall not be judged. I mean, if you don't want to judge, you better not judge other people. If you judge me, you're going to be judged, but I don't judge. I don't judge anyone, so I can't be judged. I'm going to overcome in the judgment because I'm not going to be judged because I didn't judge. It's not how it works. You're not going to overcome in the judgment because you didn't judge. Keep reading, man. That's not the end of it. Matthew 7:1, judge not that you be not judged. Well, I'm just not going to judge other people and then I won't be judged. No, that's not the whole thing. Yeah, that's true, but there's more to it, Like, if you call now, call right away and we'll double your offer. Look, there's more to it, man. Hold on, wait, don't hang up yet. Don't change the channel. We're adding to the offer here. You got to keep reading. There's more to the picture here. Matthew 7:1-2 says, judge not that you be not judged. Yes, Jesus said, don't judge that you be not judged. But he didn't stop and then turn and change the subject to something else. He said, for with what judgment ye judge, ye shall be judged. And with what measure ye mete, it shall be measured to you again. Look, here's the key. You judge. So you're going to be judged how you judge. You judge. He didn't say, judge not, and if you don't judge, then you're good. And, because if you don't judge, no, he said, with what judgment ye judge, ye shall be judged. You're going to be judged because you judge. And you judge, and you're going to be judged how you judge. I mean, there's no getting around the fact that you judge, and so you'll be judged how you judge. There's no getting around the fact that ye mete, you distribute, you give, so it's going to be given and measured and equated to you again. There's no person that doesn't mete. There's no person that doesn't judge. And you look at Luke 6:37, judge not and you shall not be judged. That's not the end of the story, man. There's more. Hold on a second. Don't hang up. Don't change the channel. Let me add some more here. Let me add some more to your offer. Condemn not, he says, and ye shall not be condemned. In verse 38, he says, for with the same measure that ye mete withal, it shall be measured to you again. Look, how can God reward you if you haven't given? You got to have given. You got to have given to somebody else. You got to have distributed. You don't have treasure in heaven if you haven't given. So you're not going to get any judgment if you haven't judged. So how can God judge every man like he says he's gonna? You're gonna get judgment. So you have to judge. And you have judged, and you do judge. Even if you think you don't judge, you've judged. So the key is don't judge, but you got to judge. How do you understand that? How do they both coexist? Because you have to judge, and you do judge. John 7:24 says, judge not. Is that it? No, there's more. Judge not according to the appearance, but judge righteous judgment. See, Jesus didn't say, judge not, have a good day. That's the end of the lesson. He says, judge not this way, but judge this way. He says, judge. Jesus didn't say, judge not, end of story. He said, judge not, but then he also said, judge. You have to judge. Judge not according to the appearance, according to the flesh, according to what you can see, according to what is manifest in this world, what flesh sees, but judge righteous judgment. Judge the way God judges, binary judgment. If you're not perfect, you're not going to heaven. If you sin ever, you're not going to heaven. That's how God judges. That's righteous judgment. So if you're not just as righteous and just as perfect as Jesus Christ, you're not saved at all. You better judge that way and not judge the way that you do judge. Not judge the way that man judges. Stop judging and start judging. That's what you need to do. Stop judging the way you're judging and start judging the right way. It's not judge not, end of story. It's stop judging the way you're judging and start judging the right way in truth. Start judging in truth. Start judging according to the truth. Isaiah 1:23 says, thy princes are rebellious and companions of thieves. Everyone loveth gifts and followeth after rewards. They judge not the fatherless, neither doth the cause of the widow come unto them. This is what rebellious people do. They don't judge. You say, well, I'm not judging the poor. I would never judge another person. That's your problem. That's why you're rebellious, because God says judge and you won't do it. You don't judge. It's backwards, right? Our understanding of judgment is backwards. You need to judge. People love going around saying, don't judge. Jesus said don't judge or else you'll be judged. That's the whole problem. If you don't want to be judged according to the flesh, then don't judge according to the flesh. But if you want to be judged in the spirit, then judge in the spirit, because you're going to be judged. You're going to be judged according to how you judge. They judge not the fatherless in truth. They don't judge. That's the problem. You better judge. Not judging is not a good thing. You need to judge. He told all the people in the Old Testament to judge. Jeremiah 5:28. They are waxen fat, they shine. Yea, they overpass the deeds of the wicked. Justifying the wicked, man. It's an abomination to God. They judge not the cause of the fatherless, yet they prosper. And the right of the needy, do they not judge, man? You can't not judge. You're a wicked man if you're not judging. You think it's a righteous thing to not judge someone? You better judge. But if you're going to judge according to the flesh, it's wrong judgment. It's not clean. It's not good. You need to judge according to the Spirit. If you're not going to judge the way God judges, if you're not going to judge somebody's salvation the way God judges salvation, you're going to judge salvation according to the flesh, according to the appearance. You're not judging in truth, so you're not judging at all. They judge not the cause. God's not going to call that good judgment. He's going to call it evil judgment, and so you're going to get the evil judgment that you judge with. They judge not. They won't judge. They refuse to judge. That's the problem. Well, I don't judge other people. I can't, I don't know. I can't say whether or not he's saved. I mean, if you turn away and become a serial killer for the rest of your life and you die like that, I mean, you're probably not saved, but I can't say for sure. I mean, only God can say, only God can judge because, and they do that crap all the time. Oh, I can't say for sure he's lost just because of the way he was living. But I mean, it's probably an indication he should check his salvation, because if he was really saved, I mean, I don't think he would do that. Well, I won't judge him though. I won't say he's lost for sure, because only God judges. Only God can know. And like, well, if you became a serial killer and you lived the rest of your life as a serial killer, and then right after you murdered your last person, bam, you got hit by a bus and you died like that. would God let you into heaven, or would that possibly hurt your chances? Oh, well, I don't know, because I don't judge. I'm not the judge. Only God judges. Well, that's your problem, man. If you can't answer that question, then you don't understand judgment. You won't judge. You refuse to do judgment. And that's a big problem. You're robbing the poor. Proverbs 21:7 says, the robbery of the wicked shall destroy them. This is what's destroying you. This is what's going to destroy you. You're robbing people, man. What are you talking about? I'm not robbing anyone. I don't even judge the poor. Yeah, that's why you're robbing the poor. You won't judge him. You won't give him judgment, man, because they refuse to do judgment. They refuse to do judgment. That's robbing the poor. You won't give him judgment. You won't say, look, this is the good stuff and this is the evil stuff. Rather, this is the good stuff up in heaven. This is the true stuff. And if you've never done this, if you've never eaten this, then you're not going to live forever. But if you've done one good thing one time, you're going to live forever. But, if I done a lot of this, if you're not judging righteous judgment, you don't understand, you're robbing the poor. God's words are binary. God's truth it's spiritual. And if you don't understand it spiritually and apply it spiritually and judge spiritually, then you're robbing the poor. And this is what they did to Jesus. Acts 8:33, it says, in his humiliation, his judgment was taken away. Who shall declare his generation? For his life is taken from the earth. They wouldn't even judge Jesus, man. They took away his judgment. Railroaded him and put him on a cross and blah, 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 and had a mock fake trial and all. Well, you can say they judged, whatever, but in truth, they took away his judgment, man, because he was perfect and they condemned him. He was perfect. And they said, well, nobody's perfect. I mean, he's a sinner like everybody else, man. He's lifting himself up against Caesar. He's doing this and that. He worked on the Sabbath day. He's a sinner. We know this man's a sinner. His judgment was taken away. And if you're going to call somebody else and say, well, look, he's a sinner and he's not saved because he turned away back to his sin. He said he believed in Jesus. He prayed one prayer one time, but then he turned back to his sin, man. And so it was a false conversion. He didn't really get saved because, he didn't change the way he was living. There was no transformation. And you've just condemned the poor. You took his judgment away. You robbed him. You took his judgment. You refused to do judgment. You got to judge. You got to give him judgment. You can't not judge at all. You have to judge. So if you're going to give to the poor, you're going to have to give them judgment and you're going to have to judge the poor.